Right, I think we have pretty much everyone who signed up has joined. So a warm welcome and thanks for the time to join our quarterly webinar. I'm Dale Veron, the CEO for Fortune Bay Corp. Gareth, our technical director, he was advertised to join. Unfortunately, he can't. He's up in Uranium City at the moment, just getting everything ready for a drilling program that's about to start on our Mermac uranium project. It's going to be pretty short today, but we'll give you an update of our latest activities. If you do have a question that comes up, please put that in the chat box and I'll get that answered for you at the end. We will be making some cautionary statements. You can find those in more detail on our corporate presentation or on our website. So today's webinar will focus on our uranium projects. That's been the bulk of our activity over the last 3 months or so. Firstly, Mermac, prepping for a drilling program there. It's that project's now under option agreement with Aero Energy Limited, and we've been hard at work generating targets and about to start drilling there later this week, which we're really excited about. We'll also recap on our Woods uranium projects. We've been talking to various people about those, and for those who missed the last webinar, we'll provide just an overview of those projects. We'll wrap up with sort of a corporate updates, some investment highlights, and then onto the Q&A. So our uranium projects, they're all focused on that northern rim of the Athabasca Basin, which is shown here. A lot of the discoveries and exploration historically has happened on the eastern side of the basin, and more recently you've seen a lot of activity on the southwestern side of the basin around Triple R and Arrow. We focus on the northern rim of the basin. We just think there's tremendous potential here. It's got the right geology, but very underexplored, and really believe it's a new frontier for uranium exploration for these high-grade basement-hosted deposits associated with the Athabasca Basin. We have our Strike and Mermac projects, which were the first projects that Fortune Bay generated on the uranium side, which is near our flagship asset, Goldfields. And those we did some initial work on, and that's, as I mentioned, now under an option with Aero Energy. Further to the east and just to the northeast of Fond du Lac, we have what we call the Woods uranium projects, and that's really a package of 5 projects that we're looking to option out and do a similar arrangement as we have done with Aero. So our targeting concept on that northern rim of the basin is we're looking for these high-grade basement-hosted deposits, as shown here in this sort of schematic section of the Athabasca. What we like about these types of targets, firstly, they're shallow, they can be high grade, and they allow for conventional mining. Also, much cheaper to explore. You're drilling near surface, and certainly have the potential to put these into production, even if the grades or tonnages aren't quite as high. The example shown here, Arrow, Triple R, those are both in the development phases, so soon to become mines, and Eagle Point shown there has become a mine, and that's because they're in these competent rocks closer to surface. Other discoveries below the sandstone are much more challenging to mine, much more costly, and as a result, only the highest grade and largest deposits have become mines, like Cigar Lake and MacArthur River. Just shown on the right here is our concepts. On that northern rim of the Athabasca Basin, there's all the right rock types for these basement-hosted deposits, being these graphitic horizons that can contain these uranium deposits, and that's really our target. Now, what's characteristic about those on the northern side of the basin is they're all covered. They're obviously softer rock types, and therefore were scoured out during glacial erosion, and they sit in the valleys with a valley film overburden. Historically, this area was mostly prospected during the 1960s and 70s, and the focus at that time were these beaver lodge type deposits that occurred in the more granitic rocks, so not the graphitic rocks. And as a result, those rocks, they outcrop, and the prospecting work was really done on surface through radiometrics. Occurrences were found, those were followed up with trenching, drilling. Some deposits were found, like at Gunnar and Beaver Lodge, and mined. This just shows these types of occurrences that were found historically. What wasn't done on a systematic basis was actually go and test the graphite in proximity to these other occurrences. And what we've noticed at Mermac and Strike is that a lot of these occurrences sit in these cross faults, which you can see on surface, you can see in the satellite imagery, and those cross faults often intersect these graphitic conductors, and that's really the core target that we're chasing. And we believe there's a lot of potential to make discoveries on those, given that these graphitic rocks, because they were covered, they weren't amenable to the historical prospecting that was done. So just taking a look at our Strike and Mermac projects, we tested this concept. We knew there were graphitic rocks. There was some historical drilling to show that. So using primarily EM and looking where the valleys were, we did some first pass drilling across our Strike and Mermac projects in 2022. And we certainly validated that exploration model. In all our holes, we hit good graphite. The graphite was structured, and we did see alteration, pathfinder elements that were characteristic of these high-grade basement-hosted deposits. Importantly, we also intersected some uranium on all our corridors at Mermac and 2 of the corridors at Strike. And that just shows that these are fertile systems for deposits. So, certainly more exploration is warranted to advance this concept and work toward a potential discovery. Shown here is just our, in blue, just the highlights of our intercepts greater than 0.1% over 0.1 meter. So nothing tremendously high grade or thick at this time, but we certainly see the potential along Strike to make a discovery. So the option agreement that was signed with Aero in December last year, the reason for that from our corporate perspective is, we could have continued to raise money for exploration in the uranium side, but given, how depressed, share prices have been across the sector, we decided instead of taking that dilution at the company level, let's do it at the project level. And that's primarily because we do have some really good gold assets, and we don't want to dilute our shareholders against that. So we signed a really good deal with Aero Energy Limited. We've been certainly really happy with that, and it allows Aero to earn up to 70% interest in the Strike and Mermac projects for a total cash consideration of 1.35 million, shares of 2.15 million, and then a $6 million exploration spend. Also, Fortune Bay is the operator for these projects, so we're entitled to a management fee of 10% on that $6 million. Aero's done a great job of getting moving with these projects. They raised money earlier this year, and we're now in the stages of about to drill, whereby they're looking to meet or exceed that $1 million commitment in the first year of exploration. Of course, we have received the $200,000 in shares as well as the cash. So what was done in April was a VTEM survey over Mermac and Sundog. Now, Sundog is a project owned by Standard Uranium and is also subject to an option agreement by Aero. So they're really treating it as an entire package with regards to some of the surveys and exploration targeting work that's going on. And this survey of our Mermac project included 955 line kilometers of VTEM surveying. So that's a helicopter-supported EM system, as shown in this figure on the bottom left. Also includes magnetics. And what we did at Mermac, we had some previous coverage on a 200-meter line spacing across our original land package. And we infilled that to bring that line spacing up to 100 meters, so a higher resolution, as well as completing 100-meter spacing over the expanded portions of the project to provide a complete high-resolution data set for that. And the high-resolution data will allow us to map in more detail of conductors, look for features of importance along the conductors, such as breaks or jogs, and improve our targeting abilities. So this is on the left here is the results from that VTEM survey, and we've been working with Convolutions Geoscience. They're a geophysical consultancy based out of Vancouver, and they have numerous geophysicists on board that have a vast amount of experience targeting these types of deposits in the Athabasca Basin. So it's been great to work with them and in the target generation phase. On the left is the V10 survey data that was just wrapped up in late April, just showing what's called a moment map, a late channel, which is the deeper signal, and just highlighting our Armbrust and Howland corridors where we see numerous EM bright spots. We know there's conductors all along them, but those are really the bright spots along the conductors, and then the pitch vein corridor further to the west. The western part of Mermac, the signature is quite different because there's a lot of more sulfide in those rocks, so it's a much higher conductivity units in that package, and that's why that lights up like that. So we're really targeting the graphitic units and the main structures there. On the right here is our inverted 3D gravity model. In 2022, we did ground gravity, and gravity is useful in trying to find these basement hosted deposits because the gravity lows can show these alteration halos that are made of clays that sit around the mineralization, provide an enlarged exploration target. So that gravity data that we collected, it went through an inversion process. Two types of programs we've used, one from UBC, and the one shown here is the BPMG modeling and inversion program. And what's being achieved here is we stripping out some of the sort of surface noise from overburden and some of the lake areas, and actually looking where there's these deeper seeded gravity anomalies that would potentially represent these alteration halos around mineralization at deeper levels. So there's the summer drilling program that's upcoming. We've selected a total of 13 priority targets. There's a lot more targets across the property, and it was quite a job to whittle down all the targets we had previously generated to this final set that we could include in the drilling program. The target criteria we used included obviously the geophysical signature, the EM, and the gravity, as I showed on the previous slide. We also looked at the geological and structural setting, and those can be determined from the faults that you can see in the satellite imagery, as well as some of our previous drilling that we did. The proximity to uranium occurrences of interest was also important. As I showed, the model we're targeting is where we see often uranium in these cross faults, and there's certainly a lot of that across the Mermac property. These little yellow dots here are the historical uranium or radioactive occurrences. That's everything from the historical work. We really focus on certain occurrences of interest, those that were particularly higher grade and sitting in those cross faults. There are a number of these occurrences that are greater than 1% U3O8 sitting in the cross faults. And then, of course, our previous drilling results, we had some good results there. So looking to follow up those along strike and using the geology from those drill holes and the alteration geochem to point us toward areas of interest. So a variety of target types, and this will really be the second phase of testing across what is over 30 kilometers of strike length between the pitch vein, Armbrust, and Howland conductor corridors. The drilling program, everyone's on site. The drillers have arrived, and they're prepping to start the first hole, which we expect will commence later this week. So we're really excited to get the drill turning, and a lot of prep work has gone into getting everything ready for this program. Aero's approved a budget that should give us around 2,600 meters of drilling in 10 to 13 targets, depending on the hole depths. Hole depth's typically going to average around 200 meters. So as I mentioned, we're going almost straight into our basement, and then not much drilling to get to the target depth, which is beneficial considering some holes in the basin now are going up to over 1 kilometer to reach that target depth. And of course, our program will be results driven. If we have mineralization early on in the program, naturally there will be some follow-up of that. So turning to the Woods projects, we really see this as a new frontier for discovery. We've generated 5 projects covering around 40,000 hectares across that northern rim, covering it's noted there's a GRS set, and that's the Grease River Shear Zone. All those properties are within 30 kilometers of the basin margin. We believe that's important not to step out too far from the basin to ensure we're targeting those unconformity basement type deposits. The GRS set is very underexplored. It's only northeast of Fond du Lac. There's only 20 historical drill holes, despite like a huge endowment of surface uranium that was picked up through historical prospecting. The geology looks good. The geology and the structure of it is a major structural zone. And there is mention of graphites, through that area from the historical work that was done. But obviously a lot of that graphite is not going to outcrop. It's going to sit in the valleys, and those simply valley areas haven't been targeted. There's lots of showings here as we see these little blue dots, so lots of uranium endowment in the area, including the Fond du Lac deposit, which is really a classic unconformally related basement hosted deposit. It sits just on the edge of the basin, so there's some of the mineralization is in the sandstone, and then it does have some roots into the basement, and it's really along that structure which forms our primary target zone. The Grease River Shear Zone is receiving more interest now that obviously uranium prices are high, and it's fully staked with a number of operators there looking to do work. So we're very pleased to have acquired a dominant land position there. And like Strike and Mermac, we're going to look to talk to other parties about this project. There has been a lot of inbounds on that, so we're confident a deal can be reached, and we can see some work progressing on those projects in hopefully the near term. What's really exciting about this area is it's in Saskatchewan, and is the highest uranium lake sediment anomalies. Shown here on the left is the Geological Survey of Canada, the lake sediment database, which is plotted to show where the high uranium values are. That data set was collected on lakes. There's obviously lots and lots of lakes up in northern Saskatchewan, and they were able to achieve a roughly like 2 by 2 kilometer spacing across the shield areas. And what I mean by that is that the Athabasca Basin itself wasn't sampled, because naturally it's just sandstone on surface and the targets are beneath, they're at depth. But the shield areas show those high anomalies. And what's very noticeable is when you put the major structures of northern Saskatchewan on that, there's a strong correlation between the lake anomalies and these structures. And we can see some of that along the Grease River Shear Zone, but also we see where there's anomalies, and there are deposits in the Beeville, in the Uranium City area, three mines there. And the Grease River Shear area has a huge anomalism related to it, but just as I said, very little exploration and the potential to find deposits in that area. This data set in the middle here is the same data set, just plotted on a different scale, just to emphasize that the highest anomalies in Saskatchewan sit within our project area. A zoom in on the far right here, just showing over our Aspen project, it in fact is the highest lake sediment value there of 989 ppm. And more detailed sampling of lakes by historical operators have got values up to around 2000 ppm. So there's a huge endowment of uranium in those lakes. For comparison, mines in Namibia such as Husab and Rossing, they are mined at grades of 350 to 500 ppm. So that just gives you a degree of the anomalism in this area. And the question is, where's the source? There's a question if it's from background rocks. There are some granites that are slightly elevated, but the shear endowment suggests there could be good potential for discoveries in that area, and it's very underexplored. Just zooming in on the projects here to show some of that endowment in the area from surface prospecting. Numerous occurrences have been recognized by historical operators. This was all done using radiometrics. Anomalies were found, they got boots on the ground, and they found mineralization in a variety of settings. Some of that was vein hosted, which is very promising from a basement hosted potential, what we're chasing. In other words, there's hydrothermal uranium that's into these fractures, cross faults, etc., like we see at Strike and Mermac. Also, here's a lot of uranium occurrences associated with the pegmatites, and at grades that are equivalent to or greater than those mines I mentioned in Namibia. So we also see potential here for Rossing style mineralization, and we're looking at different settings in these areas where you could develop appropriate tonnages. We know that the grades are there, but where can we find the tonnages where there could be something meaningful. So that's another opportunity on the project, is not just the basement hosted mineralization, but also the Rossing style mineralization. And then also to note just some of the rare earth element occurrences in these areas, certainly grades that are exciting. And those occurrences were found during uranium prospecting, but not really followed up from a rare earth element perspective. So some additional opportunity on the REE side. Unexplored, as I've explained, and there's really no appropriate data sets to target these high-grade basement hosted deposits. And we can jump to that on the next slide. I'll give some clarity on that. But just 3 drill holes over our entire package here, those 3 at the Spruce project. And then favorable geology and structure. The Grease River Shear Zone, major structural crustal scale feature. We know all the high-grade basement hosted deposits sit along these types of structures, and very little, as I said, very little exploration. At Aspen, there have been a lot of graphitic rocks noted, but obviously the full extent of those is not known. So what is needed is EM surveying to determine those. Now, historically shown in this figure here is some of the EM that has been flown, and it's a type of EM called VLF EM, which was flown in 2007, and that's a very shallow penetrating type of survey. It's not really effective at picking out these basement conductors. So this data set doesn't really help advance exploration for what we're targeting. There has been a recent high resolution helicopter-borne Excite survey. It's quite similar to VTEM, but it just shows the disparity, the difference between that type of deeper penetrating survey versus the shallow survey. And on this adjacent ground, it's held by Forum Energy, and it's under option to Traction Uranium. They have started to map out some conductors there, some which appear to go onto our Spruce project. So we're confident with additional VTEM surveying across our properties, we'll be able to pick up more conductors for targeting and chase that same model that's being pursued at Mermac and Strike. There's also a large area of the Pine project here that hasn't had any modern radiometric surveying. Historical surveys were on a 5 kilometer spacing, so the opportunity to also see some surface, pick up some new surface uranium anomalies there, and again chase some of those Rossing type targets that might outcrop. So the envisaged work program going forward would be the VTEM survey along with magnetics, and that would give us an initial data set for targeting anomalous areas. Could be followed up with ground gravity, as we've done at Mermac, geochemical sampling, as well as prospecting and some mapping, and then moving quite quickly, we think within at least, or at most, a year, exploration drilling. That really wraps up the overview of our uranium assets. And just a summary slide of our investment highlights. The company is underpinned by our significant gold resource base, around 3 million ounces across our Goldfields and Experton projects. Goldfields still being the flagship asset for the company, and we are looking to get that project moving, talking to various parties about that. Upside through partner-funded exploration, that's underway through the option agreement with Aero, where we have the ability to maintain a 30% equity stake in a discovery, which would be very meaningful for Fortune Bay. Obviously, those option agreements also help cover our G&A costs, so we're not going back to the market often to raise money, which is dilutive to shareholders. Our experienced board and management. We also have an alignment with our shareholders with a 16% insider holding in the company, a tight capital structure of just 46 million shares outstanding, and a highly attractive valuation. If one just looks at our gold resource base and you look at the enterprise value of our company to those resources, you would be buying Fortune Bay now at just $3 per ounce. And if you think of that gold price around 23, just over $2,300 an ounce. So we certainly see a lot of value in the company, and we're working away to get that unlocked, despite the challenging market conditions at the moment. So thank you very much. that wraps up the webinar. We will be doing another webinar, so stay tuned for the next one, probably in the next 3 months or so. We hope we'll have some really good news out of our drilling that's happening at the Mermac project. If you want to reach out with any questions anytime, there's various channels to do that on through our website. So please do get in touch, and I'll look at the Q&A. First question: what are the future plans for the gold deposits? Seeing that we're now concentrating on uranium, is this putting us at a disadvantage with the market, not being 100% gold company or 100% uranium company? Well, while we are concentrating in the near term on uranium, it's certainly been our focus over the last 3 months. We're not neglecting our gold project. We announced last year that we are looking to move those forward. On the Goldfield side, we have been running a process with the group NRG Capital Partners out of London, and they've been talking, introducing us to various parties. They're acting as advisors to do a transaction for the Goldfields project. We really feel it's at a position where it can be moved very quickly through feasibility stages and into production. It certainly has, all the merits for a project that can be constructed. So we've been working with them and chatting to lots of parties. So we hope in the near future to announce a suitable path forward for that project, but obviously only going to do that on the right terms. So we certainly have that as a priority in the company and are working away at that for Goldfields. At Exoton, it's been quite similar. We've been talking to various parties about getting that project moving. We commenced last year some community engagement work. I was down at the project twice last year, starting to talk to the communities. It's obviously a key precursor to getting work started there to get the access agreements to the communities, and then drilling can commence. So certainly pushing hard to get those projects moving, particularly where we see gold at the moment, and some of the outlooks for gold, which should see it go to 2,500. Hopefully see it go to $2,500. Question here: how did you find the Woods projects? Well, the Woods projects were really just we staked those projects. So it's a very low cost activity for our shareholders. And it came about through us, continuing to look at that northern rim of the Athabasca Basin and seeing opportunities that weren't necessarily that obvious. I think a lot of the staking that gets done, sure, it's on uranium occurrences and some of the more regional data sets, but when we got into the details around that area and looked at the lake sediment anomalism and some of the follow-up of that was done in the 1960s, 70s, we realized there was a really key opportunity there that we believe was overlooked. So we were able to pick up those projects at good value, and managed to get in at a time when there was a lot of staking going on, but that area didn't see as much focus. So we're very fortunate to pick up such a large land holding along that Grease River shear zone. Another question: thanks for your talk. The uranium properties sound very good, especially Mermac. My question is, do you have any gold explorations here at Goldfields? The price for gold is very positive. Well, we haven't announced any plans for Goldfields, but while we're up in the Uranium City drilling at Mermac, we are going to be looking at some of the occurrences around the Box and Athona deposits again. There's 2 particular prospects there, Triangle and Golden Pond, where we actually see some really nice potential. We've built some sort of conceptual models for those based on historical drilling, and have some ideas that could generate some new targets, because there's some really nice grades at both those prospects. So our plan is to do some mapping around those and some additional sampling. So that is the plan for this year, but otherwise looking at to try to bring someone in to fund that work going forward. Another question: you indicated that the current market cap represents $3 an ounce. Are you aware of other transactions and what current recent dollars per ounce when sold? Well, yeah, that's a good question. If you look at some of our peers across the gold space, that have advanced projects, PEA or PFS stage projects, you'll see a lot of those companies trading at around $30 to $40 an ounce. So, we are certainly grossly undervalued. I think for a project at Goldfields where It's got advanced permitting. It's got a good indicated resource. It's in an area that's had historical mining. There's good infrastructure, and of course, it's in Saskatchewan. It's still a great jurisdiction for mining, still ranking as Canada's top jurisdiction. So, yeah, very undervalued, and that's where we're looking to unlock that through moving this project forward and getting a suitable transaction announced, or otherwise looking to advance that ourselves through additional de-risking work at a PFS level. And that wraps up the webinar. So I'll thank everyone for joining. Thanks for the questions. As always, Grace, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, everyone. Bye.